I think we're all wondering right now, after the results of the election we're reeling from, how did this happen? What went wrong? Am I right about it just being a vibes-based vote, or did the Harris campaign truly fail? I think there's a lot of cases we made that it was a combination of factors, and that perhaps if Biden had been switched out like 200 to 300 days earlier, then perhaps Harris would have had much better of a chance of winning. Maybe she would always have been doomed with so little time to do her campaign. Maybe she was always doomed no matter how much time she had because of anti-incumbent bias that's been so popular in the last 4 years. It's hard to say. But there's apparently a new report that has come out going over why Harris lost. And I'm genuinely curious to find out what it says, because I have no clue what it says. I'm wondering if I have already kind of figured it out myself, or if I'm totally off the money. Let's see what this report claims.
New insights from inside the campaign for Kamala Harris as Democrats continue their infighting over her defeat in the presidential election. New reporting from Notus, N-O-T-U-S, a great website, suggests that there's finger pointing and blame gaming at all levels of the Harris campaign over the campaign strategy or lack thereof, decision making or lack thereof, mismanagement or management of funds. Let's bring in Jasmine Wright.
You know what's rough about this? The possibility that this is literally just unlucky. You know what I mean? It's possible the Harris campaign did literally nothing wrong. Like, were there areas to improve? Sure. But overall, totally could have won if it weren't for the vibes. You know how, like, you ever watch, like, a Roadrunner cartoon? Like, the cartoon where the coyote and the Roadrunner? And you see the coyote attempts something to catch the Roadrunner, and it fails because of, like, a coincidence. Like, a very bizarre, circumstantial coincidence, but it was actually a really good plan. And you watch it as a kid, and you're like, okay, I know that plan failed, and I know that the definition of insanity is to try the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, but I feel like you'd be crazy to expect the same result if you attempted that plan again, because that was a solid plan. I think you just got fucking unlucky, and you got to try again, and you'll get it next time. This is the same feeling I have about the Dems and the Harris campaign. I think the policies were definitely not bad. Like, this has been, I really hope the Dems don't see this as a reason to start moving right, because this has been the most far left the Dems have ever been, particularly the Biden administration. Its policies have actually been, like, radically far left, the most radically far left. And I really worry the Dems are going to start de-escalating or reversing off that direction because they assume that's what failed them. Because the policies are great. The policies are ideal, and they need to keep moving to the left. It's just like, I worry that they're going to assume, like, oh, did we make a mistake by trying to appeal too much to people online or not? I worry that they're going to see their positives, their triumphs as failures, and not lean heavier into things that were actually good ideas. I don't know if there was any way for them to win here. So throwing the entire campaign out with the bathwater seems like a bad idea, because there's a genuine chance that, like, they could have ran the best campaign possible and lost. Genuinely. I disagree slightly. I think they should be further left, but they're going too far of right. Now it's not time yet. Too far as of right now, it's not time yet. No, I don't think so. Their rhetoric is very moderate, but their policy is very left-leaning. But the people don't know the policy. They just feel the vibes. I actually don't think the American people actually have a reality-based opinion on the Dems in regards to their radical left-wingness. I think they believe the Dems are as radical as the Republicans tell them they are, right? And so, like, the Dems having, like, an extremely radically left-leaning last 4 years, while their rhetoric remains super milquetoast, it goes to show who's paying attention and who's not, right? Like, if all you do is listen to these people speak, it's easy to push the idea that they're just milquetoast libs. If you actually follow their policy, it's pretty hard to deny that, like, this has been the most progressive administration ever by a lot.
Right, who's covering this story for Notice, also with us, CNN's chief national affairs correspondent, Jeff Zeleny. So, Jasmine, per usual, great reporting. You have this great story.
Wait, the Dems fumbled the election because of trans people? Okay, I keep hearing this talking point. The Dems fumbled the election because of trans people. What are you talking about? because of being too pro-trans. Because I assure you, the American people do not flip because they're anti-trans. Is it for being too anti-trans? I assure you, the American people do not flip their result because Harris was not pro-trans enough. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It could have been a bunch of different factors, but I think it was primarily like there's like a political game of hot potato, and the Dems got caught holding the hot potato. It just feels like that's what happened.
Describing the Harris campaign as a disorganized operation that was more reflective of Joe Biden than of Kamala Harris. She was unable to capitalize on that initial voter enthusiasm. She was
Wait, okay, we can't continue to blame Biden. Come on, you got to get off this man's dick, all right? The dude is just quietly continuing to like dude, you know what he did? Hold on. These people are continuing to try to shit on Biden because someone has to be the scapegoat. And I imagine people want to run Harris again. If you're going to scapegoat someone, scapegoat the actual candidate who ran and failed, not the candidate who didn't even run because you didn't let them. Mind you, who did not fail you last time. You just assumed they would this time and got out in front of it. Here's what Biden's been up to. Here's a video from Washington Post YouTube channel. I really love these little shorts they do.
You have around 70 days until Trump becomes president. I made this hourglass to help demonstrate that. What can we do to maintain your climate policies that Trump has threatened to dismantle many times?
Remember our plan to limit oil drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge? Finalize it.
Done.
Now, how can we help California's transition to electric vehicles?
The EPA could give them a waiver to set even tougher vehicle emission rules than that of the federal government.
Send the waiver.
You got it.
Also, get the EPA to finalize the rules restricting the release of these toxic chemicals.
Done. Sir, your time as a lame duck president is running out. Speaking of birds, what about restricting drilling, mining, and livestock?
The crazy thing as well is he's not wrong. A lame duck president means that the president was elected, sure, but there's not enough votes in the House and Senate to actually get things done. And so Biden was a lame duck president, and yet he got all this shit done. Could you imagine if Biden had a blue House and Senate his entire 4 years and it wasn't getting blocked at every turn? The kind of shit he would have been able to achieve?
Stock grazing over 65 million acres of 10 western states.
How are we justifying?
To save this bird's habitat.
What in the Tim Burton? Holy Okay, fine.
Sir, you have around...
Yeah, very good stuff. So Biden is currently in a mad rush to finalize and make permanent as much as possible, particularly a lot of his climate policies, which is actually really goated of him. There are a lot of really high level issues that he needs to ensure we're okay on after he leaves, but prioritizing climate change as existential of a topic as it is shows that he's with the program and really gets what's going on. Biden really got screwed over. Yeah. I'm excited for everyone to get guilty in a couple years, as the history, as Biden stops being current and starts to become history, people are going to start to realize man, we gave that motherfucker a hard-ass time. Still angry at Vaush. I am angry Vaush is still blaming Biden. Someone's got to take the rap. They kick him out and say, we're not going back. Finally, we're free of what came before. Yeah. And then they fail. And then they say, well, it was still Biden's fault. It's okay, dude. All right. This is how much they cannot get behind the candidate. Even when they got behind the candidate, they weren't really behind the candidate. You know what I mean? It was this way of still attacking the party, and they backed Kamala Harris to hurt the DNC because they considered Biden representative of what they hate in the DNC. It's just weird shit. And then of course, obviously, didn't turn out to vote for Kamala anyway.
Unable to make a clear distinction between herself and Joe Biden. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of examples into this piece about how the initial campaign under Joe Biden was put together. The fact that it was based off of the fact that, they may not have a lot of voter enthusiasm, not a lot of volunteers, maybe even not a lot of donor money. And so they were kind of scrappy, but that meant that it was difficult for people once Harris replaced Biden to scale up and really capture that enthusiasm and capture all that money. We know when Biden was on the ticket, it was difficult for them to staff up. People didn't want to work for Joe Biden and people didn't want to move to Wilmington. And so that left in people's minds that we talked to, people in these really key senior roles, potentially 4 or 8 years too junior for that very specific role. And so when it came to the vice president being on top, they were having problems fundraising. We reported that they missed a fundraising deadline in September after revising that a couple times based off of the projections that they made.
That doesn't surprise me. The campaign didn't have a lot of money. We need to start killing this mindset that the Dems and the Republicans are equally backed by large money interests. The Dems' primary source of funding are donors. They do massive grassroots funding campaigns where a massive amount of their funds come from. They also get massive donations from large billionaires, yes, but it's usually CEOs of companies that do it as a political statement. You got to remember, contrary to what Go Woke, Go Broke tells you, the ideas of progressive politics tend to do pretty well, and a lot of companies have donated to the DNC just to like look clean, to look nice, to a generally more Dem voting market. It's just a marketing strategy. But like the way that Republicans have been desperate to equate the Democratic Party and Trump getting backed by like Elon and all these billionaires who are celebrating his victory, it's so far from reality. Dem campaigns more often than not are desperate for money and finances because like they just don't have enough funding to run a campaign the same way the Republicans can. The Republicans are fighting for the interests of the wealthy. It is very straightforward and obvious that the Dems, who, you know, obviously they're not fighting to impoverish every wealthy person, but like clearly the Dems' policies hurt the Republicans more, or not the Republicans, the billionaires more. That is why the billionaires buy out the Republicans as much as they can.
Made when she made a lot of money coming into it, but also some of the problems with the culture, particularly around folks. One person said that they kind of had a gallows humor, a 9-to-5 work mentality, and that they were very hesitant to take advice from Harris aides that the vice president brought in once she topped the ticket. And of course, there was just a lot of criticism over the campaign leadership and what the data and analytics team were doing and what research that they were actually looking.
Holy shit. Everything I thought that could be a problem is going on. You know how I talked about how the DNC is working too much with people that are not, like, with the program? Like Hassan, who at the last big DNC event before the election went out to interview the protesters of the people protesting Kamala, saying that she's a genocider and not to vote for her and advocating to abstain from voting for her. He was interviewing them outside for hours and he got kicked out. He lost his place there. But like the fact that after his years of shitting on the DNC and the Democrat candidate, no matter who it is, that they would bring him in to cover the event to his massive audience, the DNC clearly has like this idea of like, oh, is this a popular progressive leaning figure? Yeah, bring them in. They've got an audience. Who cares if they've got a history of shitting on our party, calling it like anti-American, anti-working class, genocidal, whatever. Like, I don't know. I as an American dude, I get the whole like lefty, we got to criticize the Dem party. It's not left enough or whatever, but I'm an American. All right. I'm not European. I wish that the Overton window in America was where it was in Europe, but I'm an American. Okay. And we've got our own Overton window. Our politics are crazier. We got to focus on what's going to win us elections, because that's how we don't all die horribly on a global scale. Because, yeah, by the way, just because you're European or, I don't know, like fucking Australian or African or whatever, like you could fucking live in South Africa, the opposite side of the goddamn Atlantic Ocean from America, and you're still going to feel it. When Trump takes office, you're gonna feel that shit economically, okay? Like you're gonna be wishing that he hadn't won just as much as we are.
Looking at to form their analysis of the race.
So a lot of the aides you spoke to blamed the campaign chair, Jen O'Malley Dillon, who wanted to own all decision making. They say for the campaign. At Biden's request, you write, Harris largely kept.
The Dems were supposed to bring Vaush on for something, but at the last second, they decided to do background checks one time. Why couldn't they do that with Hassan this time? They really need to get on top of the background checks always. Yeah, that's good that they blocked Vaush from doing that. That would have been a massive scandal for the DNC, especially with, like, the porn folder stuff. Because, like, I don't know how many of you guys have, like, fallen for the PSYOP shit that Vaush's community did, but, like, man, that folder had an image in there of two drawn underage girls eating a horse's ass. So yeah, it would have been really bad if the DNC worked with Vaush, and because like whole rest of the internet knows about that and what was in that folder. And so, like, yeah, it would have been a massive fucking problem had the DNC decided to work with Vaush. I think Destiny has gone on record saying he has got contacts with the DNC now and is going to be working with them to get Hassan, Vaush, and any other, like, super hyper lefty creators that go anti-Dem candidate, like, that are, like, anti-voting type lefties, to get them blacklisted from speaking to any Dem politicians, from Bernie to AOC to, like Ro Khanna, anything like that. Just, like, working with the DNC to blacklist all of them, and I'm fully on board with that. That is massively based. The DNC needs to choke out any ability for figures like Hassan to exist within, like, the mainstream progressive space. I think that's actually a very healthy move. It's like a controlled burn, kinda. Will you be affected by that because doesn't Destiny hate you or something? I don't really think so. Destiny doesn't hate me, for one. Destiny, I think, probably would have hated me a lot more back when I was friends with Vaush, but I don't think he would have much of a negative opinion of me now. Especially because, like, I've worked on Progressive Victory with him, right? Like, we literally both worked with, like, a group that is actively trying to get the Dems elected, you know? So I think he'd probably be like, oh, yeah, you worked with PV? Yeah, you're clearly on the program, okay. You're clearly not an anti-voting lefty, so I doubt I'm going to get blacklisted from talking to politicians. I think I'm probably fine. Especially when you consider where my catalog of content and what 90% of my controversies lately have been about.
His pre-existing campaign infrastructure, as you just noted, including keeping O'Malley Dillon instead of bringing in her own campaign manager, and aides that you spoke with said she created a bottleneck, resisted advice, even withheld key polling information. Is there unanimity that it's her fault, per se?
Well, I think ultimately what I talked to is that people blame Joe Biden. They blame Joe Biden for staying on the ticket too long. They blame Joe Biden in his initial campaign for being unable to recognize just how deeply upset Americans were about the economy, about immigration, and about some of these other larger issues.
You can't blame it on Joe Biden then. If people are mad about the economy, putting the VP presiding over that shit economy that Biden had no, like, control or effect on. Well, he did have control over it. He improved it. Mind you, like, it just sucks that, like, Biden decreased unemployment and raised wages to match the prices rather than just throwing all those ideas that actually help Americans out of the window and just desperately trying to lower inflation or, like, lower prices so it looks like the economy has healed. Like I don't know, like price gouging or something like that. It's just, it's this bizarre, like, everybody had the vibe that the current administration was off. Switching out for Harris sooner probably wouldn't have changed that aspect if you acknowledge that, like, people were mad at the current incumbent.
But they say that these issues...
Harris basically was the incumbent.
Issues under the hood at the campaign, right? It's kind of like death by 1,000 cuts. They may have not lost the race for them, but they certainly did not help. And they feel very, very seriously that it did not put the vice president in the best position to win when she changed over in July.
Certainly not. You only have 107 days to run for president. Jeff, House Speaker, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi certainly sounds like she is blaming a lot of this on Joe Biden for not getting out of the race back in 2022, 2023, when he could have, like, allowed a thriving Democratic process, a strong primary and caucus process, somebody who could separate themselves from Joe Biden.
Look, this was always going to be difficult given the...
It could never have been, like, Harris that won that primary, mind you. I do agree with this, by the way. Ideally, well, it's hard to say. I don't think that any of the evidence we had at the time was actually a very strong indication that Biden would have lost. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. You can call me crazy here, but you guys remember that, like, Donald Trump had, like, record low approval ratings, but still got as many votes in 2020 as he did this time and won off of? Like, Donald Trump had, like, record low approval rating. Biden had record low approval rating. Everybody has record low approval rating now. It's just that is the case. I don't know if, like, approval ratings and that kind of attempts at predictive stuff can be that reliable because, like, people hated Trump, but they all still came out and voted for him, you know? I think a lot of people who voted Trump don't like him, and they still voted for him. Man, it just seems like the idea that Biden wasn't popular enough to win is crazy, especially when the only evidence that you can look at is the past, which is Biden bringing out the most votes ever by a margin of 10 million. Biden brought out so many votes that Republicans are still claiming it was fishy how big Biden's turnout was, and that the low turnout of this election compared to the insane turnout of 2020 is evidence that Biden cheated. They literally point to that massive turnout, and the only explanation they have is the cope that the Dems had to have cheated for Biden to have performed that well, because it blows them out of the water that much. I know it sounds insane because, like, it's old crusty Joe where everyone was complaining the whole time, but everyone was complaining from the media to, like, the approval ratings about Trump too, and he still had massive, like, turnout. If it weren't for Biden's insane turnout in 2020, he would, like, I think the Dem would have lost. I don't know, like, it's either COVID's fault, which is not the control, or COVID and the war that affected the global inflation's fault, which isn't the fault of Biden or Kamala, mind you. It's just they got fucked. They got unlucky. They were holding the hot potato when it was their turn, or the people's turn to decide who is in trouble. They were holding the potato. And then, like, I don't know. The idea that Biden needed to drop out, if he was going to drop out, I do agree he needed to have done it back in 2022, though. That is true. But this is the thing. If they wanted to boot him, which they ended up doing, they should have done it in 2022 or 2023. They should have given Harris a year if they wanted to oust him. If they knew, like, oh, it's getting too late, it's been like 2 years out from the election, Biden's not dropped out, why didn't they oust him then? Why did they wait and go through the whole process 107 days out and then put themselves in this situation? We lost regardless. So why? I don't know. It just seems like we probably should have stuck with what was, like, evidentiarily known to work. We don't know if it was COVID that really caused the results. If it was, then we would have lost either way. But at least we knew that Biden can bring out, like, so much voter turnout for Dems that the Republicans cope by calling it cheating. So maybe we should have stuck with him in hindsight. This, like, trying to find, like, and blame him for this now, it's just so cringe. I think the Democrats were going to lose anyway, so instead of tarnishing Biden's record, they threw Kamala under the bus. But now they're trying to, well, I guess it's just a campaign person talking about blaming Biden. Yeah, maybe. Maybe they just didn't want to tarnish Biden's record, and they did. Yeah, because, like, in 4 years, Biden's record is going to, like, be history and not, like, debated current politics. And then it's going to be like, hey, don't you guys want to go back to Biden's, like, look at the chart for U.S. GDP when Biden started his presidency compared to when it ended. See, he completely repaired the economy through his entire term. Don't you guys want to go back to that and not what Trump did in the last 4 years? That's probably going to be what they're playing for, I guess. Trump announced a Fox News host as Secretary of Defense. Jesus.
The inflation.
Wait, no, not Tulsi. No, it's not Tulsi, is it? Wait. He did not make Tulsi Secretary of Defense, did he? Oh no, Elements, don't tell me he did that. It's Tulsi. That's the only Fox News host that makes sense. Oh no, he totally made Tulsi. Are you memeing? Not Tulsi, some other douchebag? Oh, okay. Not great, but man, I was dreading the potential Tulsi Secretary of Defense position. Oh, that shit had me scared. I've been dreading the possibility of a Tulsi appointment for that position. You know, her and her, like, cringe-ass, like, anti-America, no war with Russia, let Russia have Ukraine politics, right?
Headwinds, but many people agree with.
She's bought out by Russia.
If you look back to
like
the
hard.
midterms of 2022, that is something that emboldened President Biden, that he thought the message from the midterms, where Democrats did not get blown out, that they thought that was a sign that there was some sort of need or market for him. So that was one thing. That, there's no question the timing and his decisions really affected everything. Also, an over-reliance on abortion rights. That was also a lesson mislearned. A variety of people we've talked to said because it was so successful in 2022, they thought that this was the thing that would really overtake inflation in the economy. It simply didn't. But with young voters in particular, that remains kind of a mystery to this.
Why? It's not a mystery. Are you unaware of what the birth rates are for Gen Z, dog? Gen Z's not having kids or sex. Why would Gen Z consider abortion a high polling issue when Gen Z's famously biggest issue is finances? Gen Z doesn't make enough money to be concerned about relationships, sex, kids, or that any of that, right? Like it's getting to the point where much of Gen Z is so busy and so focused on just trying to grind and make ends meet that's probably a big contributor of the male loneliness epidemic. I can say that as a Gen Z man, I oftentimes neglect seeking out relationships just because it's like, dog, if I was dating someone right now, like I would be streaming for like 8 hours straight, and that would be 8 straight hours that I am spending neglecting my partner, and that's just cruel, right? And so a lot of Gen Z is getting to be like that mindset, you know? Like when you can barely get by and your entire life is work and die, work till you die, why would you vote based on issues that have no bearing on your life? Only like generations that came before that had the luxury of caring about that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's probably why Gen Z did not care that much about the abortion issue. Can't afford shit, you know?
Just 1%.
Can't even afford to fuck.
In each of the 3 blue wall states, if you will, in some of these college towns would have made a difference and did not appeal to young voters. So look, this failure has 1,000 fathers. There's no doubt. You have to give some of the blame to Vice President Harris, but certainly much more.
Streaming is your job, though? Well, that's what I'm saying, though, right? Like, everybody has a job. My job is honestly one of the easiest that you could have as a Gen... I'm lucky as a Gen Z guy to have a job like this, because otherwise I would be working in, like, some awful area of work a ridiculous amount of time just to make enough to get by, right? Like, yeah, even I, in my situation, which is pretty okay, am like, man, I'd feel cruel being in a relationship because of the amount of time I would be neglecting to spend with my partner. And I think a lot of people who aren't even like in that weird incel area, a lot of Gen Z men are in that area too. And a lot of Gen Z women are like, I don't even want to risk it. I don't want to, like, I'm focused on my own thing. It's just, Gen Z's just got too much on their plate for like that issue to be something that can overtake the economy. It's a simple answer.
To President Biden.
But you also know that Jasmine writes in her reporting some of the aides say Harris was unable to capture and channel voters' anger. And it's the same point that Bernie Sanders raised. He was on with Dana Bash yesterday. He says working class voters have been abandoned by the Democratic Party. And Nancy Pelosi.
This is true. I think the Dems probably need to lean a lot heavier rhetorically into working class populist rhetoric. Like on par with Bernie's. The problem is, like, I don't know. Like, the Dems are pretty progressive, but they're not Bernie progressive. Like, I don't know if they're willing to go that far. Especially because when they do that, they basically lose the last of their corporate donors. If they go full Bernie Sanders. Like, the DNC will lose the last of its corporate donors and will be operating on pennies compared to the Republican Party's billions, you know? It would be a pretty rough switch, but I do think rhetorically that has to happen. Like, it has to. Trump won primarily based on economic populism this election, and it actually crossed the partisan lines with voters. I do think that if the Dems tried to appeal to that sense of working class anxiety way more and explicitly in like a populist way, not this like brand safe way of I'm a middle class person, we're trying to fight for the middle class. No. You got to talk about the working class. You got to talk about the working man and how these people are taking money from you. They're getting bailouts from the government. Meanwhile, you're going bankrupt. You know, like that's the rhetoric that is going to sit with people. And now's the time to play it because we're about to enter an incumbent of Republicans that are going to destroy the economy. Now's the time for the Dems to lean heavy into populist economic rhetoric to hard win back all these seats and the presidency in 2024. And maybe even by 2022 in the midterms.
Doesn't.
Not 2022. Oh, man, I'm talking like it's 2020. Oh, man, I'm in the past. I mean 2026 and 2028. My bad.
Buy that, but what are you hearing about that and Harris's inability to capture voters' anger?
It's the anger and also just understanding the economic realities of high housing costs. She talked about that, but appearing with the celebrities and others didn't necessarily reflect that.
In a really piecemeal way, not recognizing the fact that people's rents are so much higher than they were 4 years ago.
For sure, but very difficult to distance herself from it. But there's no doubt, anger is part of it, but the celebrity culture it didn't end up playing so well.
All right, Jasmine, right? And
I agree with that, by the way. That was actually, I think, what really might have been enough to push the limit and lose Hillary the campaign, because that was such a close race on the state level. I do think that Hillary might have won had she relied less on celebrity endorsements. I think the celebrity endorsements they sound like a good idea, but I think, for one, a lot of these celebrities, your Taylor Swifts and whatnot, they're really likely to vote Dem to begin with, right? And so Hillary, in 2016, was like constantly endorsed by all these big celebrities, all these big Hollywood celebrities. And people mostly framed it as cringe because Obama was the president. It was the Dem incumbent for 8 straight years. And now this new Dem was coming along trying to get elected for a 3rd Dem term and talking like it's just an easy path into the White House, and like the red carpet's been rolled out for her, and there's all these celebrities telling her this is her future. It's like all already been set, you know, like it's already a given, basically. And that's a little bit cringe to people, I think. Like, a lot of people consider that cringe when you are, for 8 years now, you are the establishment. Now you're like acting as though you're bringing in celebrities and talking like you're counterculture. It just doesn't play well. Now, though, like think back to 2020. You know how like everything from the Sacha Baron Cohen movie that came out right before the election in 2020 to just like all the talk shows and the nightly shows and the news and all that shit, like all of it was popping off, even though it was platforming a lot of mainstream Hollywood celebrities, despite, and it wasn't seen as being like corporate and fake, because the Republicans actually held power and they were speaking truth to power, not coming on to endorse the furtherance of the people in power. It plays so differently when you get those celebrity endorsements as the incumbent compared to when you're trying to gain power from the opposing side. One looks like counterculture, the other looks like using celebrities to keep power. It's just a different vibe.
Jeff Zeleny, the Stallion, we call him, Jeff.
Nice, okay. The Stallion. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this segment, if you thought that the points made were interesting, I think my points were the best, to be honest. I think I am the only person worth listening to. CNN is actually quite cringe these days, but that was a decent enough segment. I feel a little bit informed about what the discussion has been inside of the Democratic Party and the Harris campaign. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the segment, please consider leaving a like. Every single thumbs up goes a long way to boosting my channel, my streams, and my videos in the algorithm, so I really do appreciate it, as usual. Consider following my social medias linked down below in the description. Comment, subscribe, join my fan Discord if you haven't already, so you can be there for my watch parties, call-in streams, or gaming events that I host every Friday, every week in my Discord. And if you want to support me directly, if you can afford it and you feel like it, then consider helping me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch through the Streamlabs link down below, because I do have merch, if you didn't know. Regardless, though, thank you for watching this segment, and as always, have a good one. I hope to see you again.